On the federal level, same kind of percentages. 70%, more or less, of presidential candidates coming in amounts of 1,000 or more. Congressional candidates as well, if you add in political action committees as well as individuals. Not the parties. Big change in political parties when soft money, unlimited contributions were banned. Now nearly half the party's money comes from small contributions. That's essentially. So what we're learning is that this business about a very high percentage coming from very few donors who do 1,000 is not universal. There are states where that's not true. So what do we know about these people? I think we just have to notice the fact that sure there are organizations out there, certainly trade unions, who only begin to scratch the surface of sort of alternative voices. They really are different from a lot of the rest of us. There have been pretty good surveys. 95% of $1,000 donors earn 100,000 or more. More than compared to 30% of small donors and 11% of the population. More than a third of the $1,000 donors earn $500,000 or more. That's compared to 1% of the small donors and a lot less than 1% of the general population. And the big donors do come, and the patrons, the very important patrons of public interest groups, they do come as Republican, Democrat, they do come as liberal, conservative. And I'm, for one, not one of these folks who want to read these people out of the system. But they just don't have the same agendas, issues, as folks who find themselves at the other end of the economic ladder. So the question is not, do you find organized groups opposed to issues already on the agenda? The question really is about the agenda sacrifices. And I don't know whether the numbers are the same in New York City, but I'm sure here you're wrong. Okay.
It's interesting because New York City is it's very hard to say, in New York City, since the institution of the Libertarian Financing Program has that wealthy people dominate the election. It's almost exactly the reverse of what Michael has just said. About 3/4 of the people who gave money to city candidates give $250 or less. $250 in 2001 became a magic number because that was the cap for matching funds. Before it was 1,000. And part of the reason to change from the 1-to-1 to 1,000 match to the 4-to-1 to 250 was to encourage people to solicit contribution from smaller donors. So, but it certainly has been true in 1997, 2001, 2005 that almost 3/4 of the people who give money to city council give small contributions. We haven't done the analysis that you were talking about for the $250 donors, but I assume that if you're giving less, you're certainly a person who makes less money. I mean, I think it's true. An assumption that probably without empirical accept. But the contribution size has been rising, the average contribution size. So while 3/4 of the people who give money give less than 250, the contribution size has been going up. And so for instance, for mayor, in 1997, the average contribution size was $788. In 2001, it was $811. The median contribution size from 1997, immediately in 2001 went to 250 because that, so it's not. But on the city council level, it's more interesting because in 1997, the average contribution was $169. And then it went up to 167. It went down a little bit to 167 in 2001. There was a special, redistricting election in 2003 for city council. The average contribution size was $225. And in 2005, it went up to $243. So it's been creeping up. A lot of that has to do with politics in New York City and the fact that New York City has term limits. And 2001 was the first year that term limits were in effect. So fully about 90% of the elected officials in New York City were term limited in 2001. So that kind of skews, the results. It's hard to really say what's going on. But through the most recent disclosure statement that was filed in July of this year for the 2009 election cycle, the average contribution size is gone up to $918 for all offices, up from $707 for all offices in 1997. And, part of that can be attributed to that now, as all across the entire country, elections are longer, people are fundraising earlier, and the early fundraising is, usually comes from people who have a lot of money and they're kind of easily free, to get, and so that is going to be always the case that you're going to get bigger contributions early on. But now everyone knows whether they're term limited. A lot of people are, a lot of 2001 elected officials are now term limited for 2009. So there's a lot more people running for city offices. For example, in 2001, 2 people ran for city controller, not a very sexy office. Now there are announced, I think, 5 announced candidates for city controller already, in the elections after 2009. Some of those people might fall off, but these are people who are actively fundraising for the office of city controller, which is something that's never been seen in New York City. Have that much activity at that elected office.
I want to follow up something that Amy just said that I think will segue into something else that people want to talk about. You heard, so listen carefully. It was, what Amy said was that 3/4 of the donors give $250 or more. What I said was...
It's true. It's
exclusive.
Yes.
What I said was 70% of the money came from people who gave $1,000. Now, in New York City, these people who were giving $250 are worth $1,250. And this, so if you were to take the money and look at the $1,250 and attribute it to the ones who gave the small amount, you would see that the percentage of money that could be attributed to small donors is way higher in New York than it is in places without the match, which completely changes the strategic calculations of people inside the campaign. In the federal level, just as in New York City, the vast majority of the donors are giving small amounts, but their value is much less.
And I think that that's true in New York City, even with the matching funds, there is, I think it's still, especially not so much on the city council level, but for the citywide offices for mayor, the majority of the money that people have does come from the larger contributors. I think it's hard to match one is getting matched, but I think that's an interesting question.
Question in the New York City process. What's the relative role of bundlers, and would you have any way to know?
Well, in New York City, the law requires candidates to disclose bundlers. I'm one of the people, I don't think that there's... Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Bundling is what it is when someone goes, one way to gain the influence that Barbara was talking about is to collect, even if you don't have a lot of money yourself, to collect a lot of contributions, put them all together, and make sure the campaign knows that I, Amy Lopez, gave you $1 million. You're the hill raisers, the Bush pioneers, that groups of people who are, obviously they can't, there's federal laws about the maximum you can give as an individual, but, those people are going out and raising, hundreds of thousands of dollars for these candidates, and, that is a way to gain influence too.
And to